What's going on YouTube? It's Tej, back again with another video, and today coming back at you with another 2024 NFL mock draft, 3 rounds, including trades. You guys get the gist of what we're doing here, so let's waste no time. Let's jump right into it, and of course, leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's your favorite team, and what'd you think of the 3-round haul that I gave your squad? We're gonna have picks in all 3 rounds too, so if I have your team moving up or moving back, let me know what you think about those moves. And we do have some free agency, like, it sounds like, Chugg's a core for us going to New England, little things like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we get to each team. But of course, we have to start with the Justin Fields trade. And here I'm doing something a little different. Like, I wonder, basically, we're going to have New England trade back from 3. Is there a world where, like, New England would be cool with going this route? I have seen some of the reports that New England wants Jayden Daniels there at 3 if he's there. It's smokescreen season. Everyone hates Drake May. Everyone loves Jayden Daniels, so we'll see. But we do start with Caleb Williams going number 1 overall to Chicago. We just had Fields traded. This makes sense. This is going to be the chalk moving forward. Then at number 2, I'm going to still have Washington take Drake May. To me, him and Caleb Williams are the tier 1 guys of this year's class. Love them both. But it does sound like, you hear, Chris Sims, he's got Jayden Daniels too, and everyone he's talked to around the league that he hasn't heard anybody have May over Daniels. So it's going to be really interesting to see, how far this, Drake May slide maybe falls or continues to go down. So going to be interested. Maybe this will change things moving forward. But as we previously alluded to, I am going to have the New England Patriots trade out of the number 3 spot. I really do think, especially if they make the Fields trade, they could kind of look at this as like, let's give Fields a shot and let's rebuild the rest of the roster. They might also just pass on Fields, and I know there's rumors going around that they're going to trade Mac Jones. I think that's a smart decision. But they might ultimately look at this as a 2-year rebuild. So getting 13, an extra second, next year's first, next year's second from the Raiders might ultimately be what they're looking for versus, a quarterback, whoever it may be here, or even Marvin Harrison Jr., because you can trade back to 13 and still get a pretty good player, which that's the plan here. I think ideally they'd want to have the Giants trade with them, or the Falcons, or someone a little bit higher, or higher up on the board versus 13 with the Raiders. But I think in this spot, a lot of Raiders fans have been talking about, Antonio Pierce, his days back at Arizona State with Jayden Daniels. I do think the two like each other a lot. It would be a great storyline. It's just going to be super expensive to come up from 13. So it's a Raiders team that still has some holes. So, you just got to, cost, analysis there. Is it worth the move up at the expense of those picks? They like Daniels that much, and he's available, and that's their guy, then maybe it is. Then we get to Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr. This one's easy. Don't need to talk about this one. If you're taking position value out of my big board, he's the number 1 player in this class pretty comfortably, and he just makes the rest of that receiver room, in my opinion, in Arizona, fall right into place perfectly. Him, Michael Wilson, Rondale Moore, and then maybe they add one other guy in free agency. I like that a ton. We get to the Chargers. We did something interesting last time out, moving up, getting Marv. Here, I'm going to play it a lot more conservative. I honestly, right now, if the draft were tonight and you were to ask me who the Chargers are taking at 5, I think I would tell you they're going to try to move back, and they'd be willing to not get necessarily 1-for-1, points of the trade back. I think they'd be willing to sacrifice a little bit just to accumulate more assets. But they did stick and pick. I think Joe Alt's the guy. Flip him over to right tackle. This feels like a Harbaugh move. This feels like something that will benefit Greg Roman, especially in the run game. Also, you'd be setting a foundation of Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, Zion Johnson moving forward on that offensive, Jamari Sawyer too, moving forward on that offensive line for Justin Herbert. So you can kind of figure out those other pieces as you go along. I think Alt just kind of finishes that offensive line overhaul that started, prior to the Harbaugh era. Then we get to the Giants. I'm going to go Rome Odunze. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I have Neighbors just a little bit ahead of Odunze, but I think there's a lot of smart people who think Odunze is just a smidge better than Neighbors. I think it's, kind of 2A, 2B in a lot of ways. I just like Neighbors a little bit more. I can see a world where the Giants are prioritizing that big physical receiver over another explosive guy like Neighbors. They drafted Hyatt last year. I wonder if Odunze might be their guy to round out that receiver room. Then here at 7, I'm still in love with the idea of adding Malik Neighbors to a receiver room that features DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks, and then, Kyle Phillips there as that underneath slot guy. I think that's a really solid 4-receiver set. Neighbors just has with those, DeAndre Hopkins doesn't have any more. Treylon Burks can stretch the field, but he isn't as explosive as Malik Neighbors. So this is just a different receiver type. And plus, we're talking about Will Levis's arm. Like, whether you liked Will Levis a lot last year, the dude's got a howitzer. And now Malik Neighbors gets to fall underneath that. I love the idea of that. And then we're going to go tackle once we get to the second round. Here at 8 with the Atlanta Falcons, to me, the front runners for first defensive player off the board are Byron Murphy II, who I think right now, if you were to ask me, I haven't finalized my big board. I think I think he's my favorite defensive player in this class. I don't know. I do have a soft spot for like that IDL disruptor presence. But it's between him and Dallas Turner, first defensive player off the board. I think Dallas Turner's a perfect fit for Raheem Morris, and this team needs one more edge. They need a double-digit sack a season type of guy. You know, shades of what I was talking about Houston last offseason. If you get a dude, which Will Anderson proved to be a dude, it makes everything else kind of fall into place, and it makes Jonathan Grenard look that much better because he's not the only guy getting attention. I think Dallas Turner could do a lot of the same stuff there in Atlanta. So wouldn't hate the Byron Murphy the second selection here, but I think Dallas Turner is ultimately the guy they're going to go with. And I think one of the big winners out of the Combine showcased a lot more athleticism than what I've been hearing people talk about. Felt like he's lost some luster there in a lot of people's eyes. But Jared Verse, my preseason edge 1, right now he's my edge 2. I think he's kind of that, Matt Eberflus 4-3 defensive end type. Not the most bendy guy, but straight line power. I saw actually that franchise guy put out a comp of Jadeveon Clowney. I think that's a pretty damn solid comp. Like, I think that's a really solid comparison for Verse. Again, not a whole lot of bend, not a whole lot of ankle flexion, but extremely explosive, moving in a linear fashion. And also, I think has enough move sets to be able to, like, if he doesn't, blow you up at the line of scrimmage, he can win with the hand fighting against an offensive tackle. So, like that a ton. Pair him up with Montez Sweat. Feeling great about that edge tandem moving forward. And the top 3 receivers are off the board. So, kind of had to go D-line here for Chicago. I'm going to go Brock Bowers for the Jets. If you had to ask me, I think Tyron Smith's going to be the left tackle next year for the Jets on a 1-year deal. And then we'll figure out what they're going to do at right tackle. Maybe it's AVT, and they'll sign some guards, or AVT stays inside a guard. I'd prefer that. And then they bring back Mekhi Becton, or they sign some other veteran. Ultimately, I think they're going to go with a veteran route and hopefully try to find some more, not necessarily that this is something you can really find in the NFL, but more reliability, I guess you could say. A rookie, you just don't know how they're going to hit the ground running. They could be good, they could be bad. Penei Sewell struggled out of the gate and became one of the best tackles in football. The Jets don't have the opportunity to wait for a rookie tackle. So I think they're going to go veteran at tackle and then go get Brock Bowers, that number 2 weapon for Aaron Rodgers. Then we get to the Vikings. We're actually going to go back-to-back quarterback picks here. I've been saying J.J. McCarthy, to me, he's going to be the guy that McVay disciples fall in love with. So Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, I think this makes a ton of sense. And I think in a perfect world, they'd get Kirk Cousins on a 1-year deal and then draft J.J. McCarthy, sit him for a year. I just think Kirk Cousins is looking for another 2 to 3 year deal. So I'm anticipating him going to Atlanta. Should have said that at pick 8. I do anticipate Kirk Cousins is going to be the Falcons quarterback. So that's why I feel empowered to go edge there instead of J.J. McCarthy. Apologies for not saying that earlier. So in this case, I don't love the idea of drafting and starting J.J. McCarthy right away. I don't know. Maybe there's a veteran quarterback that Kevin O'Connell can kind of lure in there and be a bridge guy before J.J. McCarthy. Maybe you have to go to him right away. But I do think the McVay disciples are going to love J.J. McCarthy. And then here at 12, I've been saying this whole draft cycle. And then you hear Chris Sims on his podcast Unbuttoned talking about Bo Nix will be the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I've heard Mike Renner say it. I've said it. I've even heard Dane Brugler talking about it. Like this one, it feels like a lot of people are seeing the same stuff I am. That underneath processing that he, Sean Payton loved from Drew Brees with more athleticism that's, I'm not saying he's Taysom Hill, but, certainly closer to Taysom Hill than Drew Brees, from an athletic standpoint. I also think J.J. McCarthy could totally be his guy, but McCarthy's off the board. Bo Nix, QB of the future for the Denver Broncos. Get cheaper at that position. You're paying Russ $37 million a year, or this year, to play elsewhere, so you got to go cheap there. Then we get to the New England Patriots, and right now I feel like a lot of mock drafts I see, Talise Fuanga, got that pronunciation down. There we go. Fuanga tends to be most people's OT2 off the board. And I'm gonna ride those coattails here. I think it makes a lot of sense. I also think he is much more of a New England Patriot offensive tackle, even though there's a new regime in there. I think he fits what they previously loved about tackles, what they have previously wanted in offensive tackles versus Olu Fashanu. I think I'd still go Olu offensive tackle too, but I don't know. It's tough. We're gonna talk about him later, obviously, but I think Fuanga could be the New England Patriot type. I also think that if they're sticking with the gap scheme, this guy could light it up there. So it's a right tackle. Still got to figure out left tackle, but ultimately I think New England's going to see him as a better player than Olu. They might go Troy Fautanu, and I think that's a really great fit in New Orleans, especially now with the arm length being longer than Joe Alt, longer than Fuanga's. I mean, this guy's he's a left tackle. Like I think legitimately, I think he gets the shot to play left tackle. So I think the Saints can play him there. If they feel like Trevor Penning is the guy, okay, then I guess you could play Fautanu at left guard. I would play Fautanu at left tackle, Penning either at right tackle if Ramczyk retires, or you play Penning at left guard and you let Andrus Peat walk. So I like the flexibility basically Fautanu brings to this New Orleans offensive line, depending on what happens with Ramczyk, depending on what they do with the interior offensive line group in free agency. Fautano's got a place to start in New Orleans. Indianapolis Colts, I mean, you're going to see this a ton throughout the rest of the mock draft cycle. Like Brian Thomas Jr., he's just a way better version of Alec Pierce. Lit it up at the combine. And yeah, most of his route tree is hitches, comebacks, and go balls with the occasional post, kind of thrown in there. He's a vertical receiver, but you have Michael Pittman on the tag. I think they work out an extension. He's a possession plus, and I think Brian Thomas is the perfect complement. Josh Downs then underneath, but also can run those slot fades. Better contested catch guy than I think people wanted to give him credit for coming out of UNC. Really love that receiver duo or trio with Anthony Richardson, with Jonathan Taylor. Oh, man, that offense gets really, really scary really fast. That's when I have Byron Murphy the second come off the board, go into Seattle. Let's say they let Leonard Williams go, get money elsewhere, and then they replace him with Byron Murphy. To me, the top interior defensive lineman, like I said, probably, I think right now, my top defensive player in the class. The more I watch him, the more I just fall in love with what I think he's going to be at the NFL level. Pair him up with Draymond Jones. I think Murphy's a better run defender, so that kind of evens it out, at least compared to those two. But you also get two, absolute great pass rush presences on the inside for this Mike McDonald defense. Think about Justin Madubuike and his impact. Byron Murphy could definitely be that guy in Seattle. To the Jacksonville Jaguars, let's go Quinyon Mitchell. Wanted to finally have a mock where I had Mitchell go as CB1. Think he's a great fit in Jacksonville. They moved on from Darius Williams. This one makes a ton of sense. It's another pick you'll see a lot throughout the rest of draft season. I haven't loved the idea of going corner for Jacksonville because I don't like the idea of Darius Williams playing in the slot, but now Williams is gone. I like the idea of drafting an outside corner. Mitchell and Tyson Campbell, too. Also, I see a lot of... Campbell played a lot of man at Georgia. Mitchell mostly, zone at Toledo. But, look at the Senior Bowl. I see a lot of Tyson Campbell, in Quinyon Mitchell. So, kind of an interesting pairing there. Kind of shades of when I pair Garrett Williams and Nate Wiggins up with Arizona in these mock drafts. Anyways, let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals here at pick number 18. So, I'm going to have Amarius Mims come off the board. You'd have two absolute graders of human beings for that run game. Sounds like they're going to move on from Joe Mixon, but when you're running behind Orlando Brown Jr. left side or Amarius Mims right side, you don't need a super special back to follow those. Again, people movers. So only 8 games of college experience, but the college football playoff game 2 years ago against Ohio State, plus what he did at the combine, this guy's going somewhere in the top 24. I don't see him really getting past Dallas. So this is a chance to get that right tackle spot cleaned up in Cincy. To the Los Angeles Rams, I'm going to have Leatu Latu be the pick here. I'm kind of echoing the thoughts of plenty of other people I've heard say this, including Mike Renner. Leatu Latu's, the Rams aren't a team that's prioritizing RES scores. They don't, they just want good football players. They're a win now team right now. So Leatu Latu, not the most special athlete, but coming off a year, a PFF, overall grade of 95.3, 96.3, ridiculous. Highest grade they've given out to any Power 5 player. It's redonkulous. Back-to-back years of elite production as a pass rusher. Back-to-back years of elite pass rush grade. This is a plug-and-play guy that makes that front seven that much scarier in Los Angeles. Let's get to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I am hoping to do more stuff like this moving forward in these mock drafts. I thought about including a Mike Williams trade. I've thought about including a couple other pieces that I do think will get dealt, but I think this is a really plausible direction, and it'd be one that, as a Steelers fan, selfishly here, this would excite the living hell out of me. L'Jarius Sneed, Chiefs move up 12 spots, and the Steelers then give them pick 120. So beginning of the 4th round, or middle of the 4th round. And then basically, really, the difference between 20 and 32, when you look at the draft tech, points per pick, the difference there is about a second rounder, which I'm hearing is the approximated value for a L'Jarius Sneed trade. So this to me makes a ton of sense. Pittsburgh gets a corner that they desperately need to pair up with Joey Porter Jr., and then Kansas City gets to come up to pick 20 and draft Adonai Mitchell. Mitchell as this, inconsistent route runner, but really he pops in those double moves. So deep threat, but I also think there's room for him to grow as a bigger threat throughout the rest of that offense. If he's an upgrade over MVS, Rashee Rice is this yards after the catch threat. Travis Kelce doing everything over the middle of the field. I'm feeling really good about that receiver room. Maybe add one other veteran in free agency. Doesn't have to be anything sexy, but even a Kendrick Bourne type. Just someone who's solid, steady, okay. Just kind of be that fourth guy kind of filling in. A Zay Jones type almost, where it's just whatever you need him to do, he's pretty good across the board. He can kind of fill it out. So I love the idea of Adonai Mitchell and that 4.35 speed, his athleticism, his vertical ability going to that Kansas City offense. And, it's almost the inverse of the Tyreek Hill trade, right? Move on from Hill, get 5 picks that become very defensively focused. Here they trade a great defensive player and get to boost up that receiver room. Kind of a fun idea, and I think it makes a lot of sense for Pittsburgh too. Then we get to the Miami Dolphins. This is a Graham Barton spot, and I didn't love how this second round ultimately played out for Miami. We'll come to that a little bit later on, but I really think it makes a lot of sense for Miami if they can get Barton here at 21. Love that. If Fautano makes it here, that's a slam dunk pick. But I love the idea of going offensive line in the first round and in the second round for Miami. Despite I know Christian Wilkins is hitting free agency, they cut Xavier Howard. This offense doesn't go if the offensive line's not doing their part. So I think they'd be wise to double up, honestly, with their first 2 picks. To the Philadelphia Eagles, let's go Olufashanu here. Look, 0th percentile hand size is really concerning to me. It's still 8.5 inches, which is, like the width of a piece of paper, which actually, I don't know if this will fully showcase, but my hands are a little bit larger than 8.5 inches. It's just under 9 inches long. So my hands are actually legitimately bigger than Olufashanu. And here, I guess we can go on a quick tangent here. You'll see one end of the paper. I'm right at it, and I'm hanging off the side with my pinky. So quick demonstration there. I'm just under 9-inch hand size, so I actually have bigger hands than Olufashanu, which is something I'm bragging about, clearly. But anyways, if there's a place where he can go and he'll be able to overcome that, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tennessee Titans. I want him with Bill Callahan, or I want him in Philadelphia, where they've just continued to make gold out of all the offensive linemen that they've brought into that building. So I'm hoping this is ultimately where he goes, because I think this is the best place for him to go. It would require him flipping over to the right side, but if he's sitting for 2 years, I think they'd be able to make it work. Let's get to the Houston Texans now at pick number 23. I'm going to go Terrion Arnold here. I really thought about Chop Robinson, assuming I do think they're going to let Renard go, and then they're going to sign Wilkins to that interior defensive line. Come back to that later. Could you imagine the secondary, though, where Terrion Arnold plus Derek Stingley Jr. and Jalen Petrie then in the slot moving forward? Or even just for a year, you could play Arnold in the slot. You have another year of Steven Nelson. Petrie just constantly plays in the box. I love the idea of that. And if they do sign Wilkins plus year 2 Will Anderson, we'll figure out what to do with the other edge spot. That front seven's getting better and better. And then you have 2 legitimate great cover corners. Derek Stingley Jr. really came into his own last year. Terrion Arnold, breakout year at Bama. That's when that defense gets legitimately frightening to face. So if they can get 2 shutdown guys, D'Amico Ryans keep working his magic with that front 7, then you start all of a sudden Houston's not too far away from being built as if it's the Browns defense, right? 2 great outside corners, an awesome front 7. This is how we kind of get closer and closer to that for the Houston Texans. Anyways, let's get on to the Dallas Cowboys at pick 24. I'm going to go J.C. Latham here. Offensive tackle makes a ton of sense here. It could be an upgrade over Terrence Steele. Also, if Tyron Smith does walk, you could go into your offensive line. Also, do see some people saying Latham could play guard, so maybe we do that for a year and hope Terrence Steele bounces back. But it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. Left tackle versus left guard, what they want to do there. Could go Jax Powers Johnson here. Don't hate that. Could be a center upgrade. Could play him at guard. They bring back Biotish, move Tyler Smith over. So offensive line flexibility and a lot of options here for the Dallas Cowboys. Green Bay, Cooper DeJean. This is my pacifier. It's my safe pick here. But they need to upgrade that secondary all across the board. Going to be really interested to see what ends up happening with Jair Alexander. Felt like he wanted out, but maybe a change of defensive coordinator is enough to keep him around. If that's the case, him plus Stokes on the outside, Cooper DeJean in the slot, loving the idea of that secondary, really in just one move. Then you find a couple safeties, we're in a good spot if we're Green Bay. Speaking of Jax Powers Johnson, that's going to be the pick here at 26 for Tampa Bay. Ryan Jensen retires. Let's get a massive upgrade there. You also could play, if you feel like Robert Hainsey is good enough at center, maybe they prefer Hainsey at center versus guard. You could play Jax Powers Johnson at left guard. So it's either Matt Filer upgrade, or it's a Ryan Jensen replacement, one of the best centers of this last decade with potentially one of the best centers of the next decade. So love that a ton for Tampa Bay. At pick 27, let's give Johnny Newton to the Arizona Cardinals. These first 3 picks are my ideal haul for the Arizona Cardinals. So Johnny Newton, this interior defensive line needs a major upgrade. Johnny Newton's quicks are just up there with the best in this class. And that makes him so disruptive, not only as a pass rusher, but also I feel like he's gone underrated now as a run defender. I feel like a lot of people are kind of sleeping on that. Yeah, he's a little lighter, but also he just shoots gaps. He gets to guards before they're ready for him. So that type of disruption plays in the run game just as much as it does as a pass rusher. Buffalo Bills, here we go. This is your post-combine mock draft selection here. I don't see Xavier Worthy as a first rounder. I love Xavier Worthy a ton. Love the fact that he was Texas's leading receiver last year, at least in regards to receptions. This is just 4.21 speed plus the arm that is Josh Allen. This is a combination that makes a ton of sense. So you're going to see a lot of mocks moving forward where Xavier Worthy's going to Buffalo. He's going to Kansas City because big arm quarterback with super fast receiver. It's an easy sell. To the Detroit Lions then at 29. Let's go Nate Wiggins. A little concerned about the weight, but 4.28 speed plays, and he is bigger than the guys that they currently have in that cornerback room. So a little bit more size. And I think ultimately he's got to get closer to that 185 mark that Clemson listed him at, right? Like there's no way he's playing at 173. I would be willing to sacrifice 4.28 speed and make that 4.33, 4.34 if he gets up to 180, 182, 183. You know, I'd really love to get to 185. So I'd like to see him add that weight back, even if it does mean he loses a little bit of speed. Because trust me, low 4.3s plays, but at the same time, 4.2 speed is really enticing. This team needs another corner there long term, like the idea of Wiggins falling in their lap at 29. This is kind of growing into one of my favorite, player to team landing spots. Ladd McConkey. I've been saying this whole cycle that the Ravens need a man beater, and Ladd McConkey with not only his quicks but long speed. Like, this is a guy who can beat you underneath in man coverage, but also can be a deep threat in this offense. Could be a better version of Tylan Wallace. I kind of thought he would be that guy a few years ago, and they've had rotating deep threats in there. They have Nelson Aguilar. I think they said they're going to bring him back. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but if they do let him go, Ladd McConkey could be just as much a deep threat as Nelson Aguilar. You look at the body comps and the athletic testing, very similar to guys like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. He's not just your prototypical slot wide receiver. He can do a whole lot more than that. So, like him as that man-beater receiver in Baltimore. Then we get to the San Francisco 49ers. This is where I'm going to have Chop Robinson come off the board. Awesome combine. Probably should go ahead of this in my mock draft. Just hard to find that landing spot. But let's just give him to a team that's churned out and turned around the careers of numerous, edge rushers and really developed, toolsy guys into really polished players. They decide to let Chase Young walk. I think Chop Robinson would be a great way to replace that. And he's a guy that's all athlete right now, not enough like technician. You send him to San Francisco, this feels like the place where he's going to get to build up the actual like pass rush repertoire, and then pair that with that athleticism. God could be an absolute freak opposite of Nick Bosa. To the Pittsburgh Steelers, speaking of guys who could be absolute freaks, Tyler Guyton. I do want to say, I really thought about Zach Frazier here. I feel like if you were to ask me who's the surprise first-round candidate, like Zach Frazier could be the guy that catches some people off guard. He could be this year's Jordan Brooks, Cole Strange type. I don't think any of the receivers would surprise anybody, and I don't necessarily think the corners would surprise people. Some offensive linemen I think could shock some people, maybe not the tackles, but I think Zach Frazier could be that guy. They had a top 30 visit with him, they being Pittsburgh. So thought about it. I think they'll sign Matt Hennessy in free agency, that Arthur Smith connection's there, and let him play center or play guard and James Daniels play center. Anyways, Steelers fan going down on Steelers tangent. Tyler Guyton, only 1 year of experience, but absolute people mover, mauler, a lot of the same stuff that Pittsburgh liked about Broderick Jones. I think they could like about Tyler Guyton, and this would allow Broderick to flip over to his more natural position. He has said that himself. Play left tackle, Guyton at right tackle. I would love it. Plus, you move down. That would be a slam dunk move there for Pittsburgh. Then we get to the Carolina Panthers, and full honesty, this is I don't have a Mike Williams trade in this one, but I thought about having Carolina give up their third rounder for Mike Williams. Instead, let's go Keon Coleman here. I'm not worried about the 40. The gauntlet drill, legitimately, I am on the side that the gauntlet drill means more to me than the 40. The play speed is really what I care about, and also the dude's huge. I think a 4.6 40 is nothing to be ultra concerned about, given what his skill set is. And I think, Dave Canales coming from Tampa Bay, Keon Coleman definitely could be his Mike Evans type. So love that fit in that offense. Pick number 34. You know what? A guy that, the more you see of him, and he's just crushing this draft process. Great Senior Bowl. Way more athletic than even I thought. And I knew he'd be a good athlete, but that 3-cone is really standing out to me for Ricky Pearsall. I looked at Warren Sharp tweeted separation numbers for Devontae Parker. 4 years in a row, the man has had the league worst separation rate. 4 years in a row. Pearsall, I think, can give you a lot of what Devontae Parker does, but do it as a way better separator. That 6'6", 4'3" cone in specific tells me this guy's a very sudden athlete. He can be quick in and out of his breaks, plus the hands, plus the vertical ability. This is just Devontae Parker upgraded in a number of different areas. Finishing out this top 3 haul that I told you, this is my ideal haul for the Arizona Cardinals, and I would love it. Marvin Harrison Jr., Johnny Newton to beef up that defensive line, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and maybe you can flip Kool-Aid, make him be pick 27. Newton, maybe with his injury, pushes him into the second round. Doesn't matter to me. Those 3, that's the ideal haul. Receiver, IDL upgrade, and a corner to go along with Garrett Williams. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry, we're worried about the 40, but just a great, technically sound football player that I think can do a lot of things that Jonathan Gannon is looking for. Next up, the Washington Commanders. Let's go Peyton Wilson. It's a team that's looking for an upgrade at linebacker, and I think Peyton Wilson right now the best of the bunch. And he got the thumbs up when it comes to a medical standpoint. Sounds like he got a lot of good feedback, considering he's been relatively healthy or very healthy the last 2 years. So that's a big feather in his cap, and that'll boost his stock a ton. I think the Commanders are looking to get an upgrade alongside Jamin Davis, or really an upgrade over Jamin Davis. Pick number 37, I'm going to give the Chargers TJ Tampa. Love his man zone flexibility. Great athlete. Think he'll crush his pro day. Also ideal size, or actually more than ideal size. So, you bring in this Jesse Minter, flexible defense. Corners are doing a lot of different things. TJ Tampa could be that, kind of Swiss Army knife corner. Could do a lot of different things for that Jesse Minter defense. Then we get to the Tennessee Titans. As promised, we're going to go offensive line here. I think Morgan, I can see why people are saying like he's probably going to be a guard at the next level. I think he'd be just fine at tackle. I do expect this to be a zone blocking scheme still in Tennessee, so I think that specifically. I don't want Jordan Morgan playing tackle in a gap scheme. Definitely want him in a zone to wide zone scheme. I think if they're keeping with that, that's just fine. Also, you could give him the shot at guard, and let's see what Peter Skoronski is all about at tackle. Like, I think that's worth a shot, too. But we'll see what Rand Carthen and Callahan want to do, Brian Callahan, that is. But I love the idea of, like, Jordan Morgan going to this, Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach. I think that could be a really exciting tandem. Jordan Morgan, Peter Skoronski, however it plays out on that left side, paving the way for Tajay Spears. Also Malik Neighbors. All of a sudden, this offense is looking kind of scary in Tennessee. To the Giants, then at 39, underrated need here. No guarantee they bring back Xavier McKinney. Shane Bowen, the new defensive coordinator, coming from Tennessee. He's had Kevin Byard playing center field up until the deadline, basically, last year in that Tennessee defense. Could they go Tyler Nubin here at 39? Also, it's not a very good safety class. And Tyler Nubin feels like he's kind of head and shoulders above everyone else. Like a lot of the other safeties that people like are slot guys. So there's really one true, really solid prospect as like a true center field free safety. That's Tyler Nubin. And if Shane Bowen's going to play a lot of the same defense, he's not going to have Kevin Byard there, obviously, or more than likely. Maybe he signs there in New York. Maybe. Don't want to rule that out. But if they don't, I think Tyler Nubin could be that like Kevin Byard type for this Bowen defense in New York. Back to the Washington Commanders. So I'm going to go Patrick Ball. They have cut Charles Leno, much to the applause and excitement of Washington fans. I live here in Virginia, so I hear it all the time. A lot of people were pumped up to see him gone. I think Patrick Ball, with that arm length, this is a guy you can feel pretty confident is going to be a solid pass protector at the next level. And right now, that's like a good enough place to begin. Let's keep Drake May clean. We'll see how the run game and the movement skills come along. I want that wingspan. I want that arm length, and I want to keep Drake May upright. Green Bay Packers then at 41. I'm going to go Christian Haynes. I think this is as high as I've seen him go, but love the movement skills. I also think he's got a mean streak about him, and he's like an absolute people mover, especially at like 310, 315 pounds. Really like the play strength there. And really, I've gotten to the point where I'm comfortable with Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom. I think they both have gotten better with each game they've played. I just want to get an upgrade over John Runyon Jr., and he plays right guard. Christian Haynes' entire career at UConn. Played a right guard. Easy enough for me. Let's get to the Minnesota Vikings then at 42. This is where we're going to have Darius Robinson come off the board. I'm not super worried about the 40, but that did ding his draft stock a little bit. But for the Vikings, they need edge help. They need interior defensive line help. This is a guy that can start outside on early down. You get into passing situations. You kick him inside. Going to be really interesting to see what Minnesota decides to do with that edge group. Monum, Hunter. I kind of feel like they're going to end up getting Hunter back, but I don't know. That's just a guess. I don't know. Philadelphia feels like they might be loading up to make a move there too. So we'll see. But it's going to be really interesting to see how they handle that edge group. Darius Robinson gives them a lot of flexibility, across that defensive line. Pick 43, I'm going to go Roman Wilson here for the Atlanta Falcons. Feel like he's a great deep threat complement to Drake London, who can do some of that for sure, but Roman Wilson, a little bit more speed than Drake London. Will also be a sharp route runner, can fit into that, McVay-esque offense. Could, like you line him at the slot, could he do some of that, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp stuff? I think he can. A little bit smaller than both those guys for sure, but I think he could be that, combination of a deep threat, sharp route runner out of the slot, like him as a compliment for London, Pitts, and crew in Atlanta. Then we get to the New England Patriots, actually sticking at the receiver spot. I'm going to have New England take Jalen Polk here. Just a little bit of a different receiver than, Ricky Pearsall, and a little bit of a different receiver than Pop Douglas, and that's kind of the receiver trio I had in my mind. Like Pearsall to Polk, I think they do enough different things, and Pop Douglas I think is definitely different than those two. Douglas would probably be the kind of jitterbug, yards after the catch threat, sharp route runner. Polk, it's to me like the best hands of the group. Pearsall's got good hands, but Jalen Polk's got vice grips, and honestly, I would feel comfortable with playing him in the slot. Pop Douglas actually did a good bit on the outside last year, so him, Pearsall, Jalen Polk, I feel pretty good about that receiver trio. And let's be honest, if New England's not going to go, quarterback at 3, get an extra pick here with pick 44 from New England, wouldn't be a bad idea to double up a receiver in a great receiver class. So just kind of want to throw that out there if you're a Pats fan. Next up, New Orleans Saints. These next two picks could easily be flipped. I'm kind of open to either one. Let's go to Tavondre Sweat. I think Brian Brzee, the early returns, a little bit better of a pass rusher that first year than he was a run stopper. So could you plug in T'Vondre Sweat to be that run-stopping force, get whatever pass rush production you get out of him, but him and Brian Brzee be that tandem moving forward? I know they have a couple other guys in that mix, but I think Sweat plus Brzee could be a really fun combination moving forward. Then we get to the Colts, and again, these picks could easily be flipped because, if the Colts lose out on Grover Stewart in free agency, I think T'Vondre Sweat would be a great guy to have as a replacement. And I could see a world where Chris Braswell fits in with what New Orleans is looking for as another edge rusher in the mix. So again, you can flip these picks around. I like them for both. I like picks for both sides. Indianapolis still looking for an answer at edge. They're looking for a dude. Braswell, a lot of upside, still kind of getting better and better position. So I think with a little bit more playing time, and also you don't have to lean on him right away in Indianapolis. You got Kwity Paye, you got Deo Dingbo. You can kind of minimize his role a little bit early on if you don't feel like he's ready. So interesting idea there, but again, the Saints easily could take Braswell. I could see that being their guy, and I could see a world where Grover Stewart moves on. T'Vondre Sweat would be a great replacement for Stewart in Indy. Our pick 47, Giants fans, I feel like you're going to be really irritated with this pick, but just hear me out. I mean, I've heard some say that they've made a commitment to Evan Neal. I haven't been able to find that statement, so if anybody can link that down below, I'd love to see it. I'm not doubting it. I didn't find it. And Suamata'i is he's a bit of a project, so I could see where Giants fans are like, we need someone right now. And Suamata'i might not be that guy, and also we're talking about flipping over to the right side, so maybe less than ideal, but I still like the idea of them going tackle and moving Neal inside to guard. I ultimately think that's going to be the better place for him. And then the argument for, Suamata'i is a bit of a project, and you're asking him to flip. Well, if he's a bit of a project and you're going to have to work with him, what's making him flip to the other side? You're already going to be working with him. You're already trying to, get him up to speed and beat that learning curve. Flipping over to right tackle, at that point, it's just one more thing. Depends on how you feel about adding one more thing to the list. If you're already having to work with him, I just think, might as well just start fresh on that side. I don't know. I feel like Giants fans, this is going to be the pick that Giants fans hate the most. So let me know what you would do here at 47. I ultimately just didn't love the board and how it played out. Jags here at 48. This is going to be Zach Frazier. I think they can definitely get better on the interior offensive line. And actually, coming back to that thought, we're going to give up some of those guys that they gave up. They actually extended and re-signed Ezra Cleveland and Brendan Scherf, or I think it was a restructure for Scherf. So Zach Frazier, plug him in at center. Big time upgrade over Fortner. Cincinnati Bengals then at 49. This is not a DJ Reader replacement. You're going to need PJ Hill to be that, but could Braden Fisk be that upside pass rusher where Hill's kind of the run stopper, Fisk, explosive athlete? Don't know if he'll be great against the run, but crushed the combine. You saw the explosiveness. You saw the first step quickness. Could he be that get up field and be a disruptor from the pass rush standpoint? I think he could. I will say most of the tape I like about Braden Fisk came in the second half of this year. Doesn't mean that it's holding him back, but majority of what I liked, kind of came down the stretch, and then he crushed the combine and looked really good at the Senior Bowl. So it's been kind of the second half of this, draft process that's really stuck out to Fisk. So for me with Fisk, at least. So, kind of this riser, and, I just wonder what he's going to be like against the run. I like Fisk. I don't love him. I feel like he's starting to get a lot of love, and I'm just liking him a little bit more. Let me get to the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to go Braylon Trice. Really disappointing, combine. Comes in at a much lighter weight and then still has a disappointing 40. But it's a one-year extension for Brandon Graham, his 15th season. Got to think this is the last year he's doing that. Also, this is a team that's now taking trade offers for Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. I think Nolan Smith's that Reddick replacement. Could Trice be someone who steps in as a 2-for-1 replacement for Sweat, replacement for Graham long-term? Maybe. Or they could be bringing in Danielle Hunter. So we'll have to wait and see. Free agency will give us an idea of how early maybe Philadelphia is going to prioritize edge. Also, it's Howie Roseman, so he could prioritize it at any point in this draft, and it would totally line up with what he's done in the past. Los Angeles Rams, I'm going to go Kamari Lassiter. I think this is a secondary that just needs more talent. Lassiter may not be the most gifted athlete, but just 3-year starter, trusted as a true freshman in that Kirby Smart defense. Hashtag a good football player. I think that's exactly what the Rams are looking for. Kind of echoing back to what we talked about with them at 19 with Leatu Latu. Pittsburgh Steelers here at 52. Apparently Mike Tomlin loves Edgerrin Cooper. Pittsburgh has been desperate to find an upgrade. They have not been able to find a high-level starter at linebacker since Ryan Shazier had to retire. And I think the search continues. So I think they're going to be willing to take another shot at linebacker this year. Edgerrin Cooper, again, kind of sounds like the guy that Mike T has zoned in on. And I think it's going to take a couple years. But I could see by maybe year 3, year 4, second half of that rookie contract, he becomes one of the better linebackers Pittsburgh's had since Shazier, maybe the best since Shazier. So I would hold my fingers, I'd cross my fingers on this, but I don't think it's going to be a hit the ground running right away type of impact. So it's going to be a tough give and take narrative there for Steelers fans with Cooper. Anyways, if it even plays out like this. You see the Miami Dolphins here at pick 53, and this is a spot where it's like you look at, after this, you don't have another pick till 155. So this to me makes a ton of sense for the Miami Dolphins to want to move back. Now, that being said, again, this didn't work out as great as I had really hoped it would, but I'm going to have the Jags move up from 96, give up a future third-round pick, and throw in a player because, they extended those two guards, extended/restructured the other. But now I'm looking at Ben Barch, and I don't think Ben Barch is good, but for the Miami Dolphins, he'd be a decent backup. So this year's third, compensatory pick, next year's third, Ben Barch to get pick 53. I think that makes a lot of sense. Jags come up here, and look, at this point, you got to put everything you can around Trevor Lawrence. And I think at this point, maybe they're going to sign Calvin Ridley. I'm kind of starting to lean back in that direction. He's true. It's kind of a wide open market in my eyes for Calvin Ridley. But if they get Ridley back, he's that deep threat. Christian Kirk out of the slot. Could Xavier Legette just be a better version of Zay Jones? I think he can. And all of a sudden, you kind of have a designated deep threat, a great slot option who can also be a deep threat, plus a great tight end in Evan Ingram, or pretty good tight end in Evan Ingram, and then Xavier Legette, sub 4.4 speed, kind of that A.J. Brown body type and play strength. I like it a ton. I think it'd be worth sacrificing that future third, and Ben Barch is expendable as is, so I think it makes a lot of sense there for Jacksonville. Back to the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to go Mike Sammers still. Just one of the best pure football players in this class. 4.4, 740 was huge as well. Also, like the agility skill sets he puts on tape. I've heard some say Mike Hilton. I've said poor man's Devon Witherspoon. Either way, I love what I'm hearing and how people are comparing Mike Sammers still to NFL players. I think this, and Eagles just cut Avonte Maddox. This is a clear upgrade in the slot, and one that I think they desperately need. Cleveland Browns then at pick 55. I'm going to go Troy Franklin. Just a little bit of a different receiver than what they have with Amari Cooper, Cedric Tillman, and Elijah Moore. Maybe there's some overlap with Elijah Moore, but with a bigger frame, or at least a taller frame. I do worry about that weight. I can't lie to you. I do worry about that weight, but I do think Franklin's faster than Elijah Moore. I'd have to really dive into the numbers and make sure I'm seeing that right. I also don't have the NGS data, so who knows what they actually run at on field, but I think adding one more receiver, it's worth a shot. I'm not the world's biggest Troy Franklin guy, but given who's available, I think 55, good pairing, different skill set mostly than what the Browns already have. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys at pick 56. I'm going to have back-to-back running backs actually come off the board here in these next two picks. I'm going to go Trey Benson, and maybe this is kind of like, oh, crap, Tony Pollard signed elsewhere. We need to replace him. And I think Trey Benson would actually be a really solid replacement for Tony Pollard. Big play, speed and burst, sub 4.4 speed, but also really solid pass catcher, like the vision as well. I just think this would be a great Tony Pollard replacement. Then you're just going to have to find one more guy. I don't think I love Benson plus Deuce Vaughn, but maybe, Dowdle plus Benson. I don't love that either, but you can probably get Benson and some veteran in free agency and feel pretty good about that tandem moving forward in Dallas. And then here in Green Bay, I heard somebody say Blake Corum is just Aaron Jones. And I was like, well, damn, now I can't unsee it. Kind of. There's a lot of Aaron Jones and Blake Corum. And also, running a 4.53, I think that was a really solid time for him to post, better than I thought it would be at. So I love the idea. Let's move on from A.J. Dillon. Let's just get two guys that are very similar, and let's just keep one another fresh. Ultimately, who's been the more efficient back in that offense? Aaron Jones. So when you want another one of those guys versus A.J. Dillon, I get in theory, speed versus, kind of speed and quicks versus, downhill thunder. Just stick with what works. I think getting another Aaron Jones type in that room would be really fun. Then we get to Tampa Bay at pick 58. I'm going to go with Adisa Isaac. I know it wasn't the most insane combine. I think he's a better athlete than when he posted. Probably going to get some improved numbers from his pro day, but also a guy with some length and play strength. Just kind of a jack of all trades. Don't know if he's great at any one thing. Don't know if he has any trump card trait, but he's just kind of B-level, B-plus level guy across the board, and I like that a ton. So throw him in there with Joe Tryon-Shinka. Like that for Tampa. Pick 59, Houston. I'm going to have them take Jalen McMillan. I've been high on McMillan throughout this entire process. He was actually on my preseason honorable mentions for the receiver class, and not on that list was Jalen Polk. So let you know how high I was on McMillan coming into the season. Battled injuries, but when healthy, I think he's the perfect receiver as that receiver 3. Different skill set than Tank Dell, Nico Collins. Jitterbug with the ball in his hands. Could be yards after the catch threat. But also could be that slot fade guy, field stretcher there. So just one more weapon to throw into that Bobby Slowick offense. One more weapon for CJ Stroud to take advantage of. Then we get to the Buffalo Bills here at pick 60. It could be interesting to see what they do in free agency with Daquan Jones hitting free agency, but Ed Oliver, we're starting to see him hit his stride as a pass rusher. Still not a very good run defender. Chris Jenkins, sub 300 pounds, plays like he's 325, 330. He's just got insane play strength for someone who's 295-ish. And I love the idea of him being that run stopper that keeps Ed Oliver clean. You're going to need all the pass rush production you can get out of Oliver. Let's keep him clean with Chris Jenkins alongside him. Next up, Detroit Lions. This is a repeat pick for me, and I do apologize for that, but I just love the fit. Cooper Beebe. I think, you look at what Kevin Dotson just got from the Rams. $16 million a year. Jonah Jackson's going to get a bag, and I don't know if the Lions will be able to match that. So I think Jackson's going to get a haul. I think Mike Onwenu, whether he's playing guard or tackle, I think both those guys are going to end up getting some really good money in free agency. So in that case, if the Lions don't feel like they can match Cooper Beebe, I think this is a great replacement at left guard. Better combine, better athleticism traits than I thought. So it's strength, it's multiple years of starting, great pass protection tape, and he's a better athlete than expected. I like that a ton as a left guard replacement for Detroit. Then we get to the Baltimore Ravens here at 62. I'm going to go Ennis Rakestraw Jr. 4.5, like everyone's kind of dinging Arnold and Rakestraw for like a 4.5 40. I don't think it's the end of the world. Like, and Rakestraw is a little bit taller than Arnold. I'm not really worried about it. I'm really not. We'll see ultimately what the scheme kind of turns into in Baltimore. Mike McDonald, did a great job scheming up pressure. And if, the same is true next year in Baltimore, I don't worry as much about a 4 or 5 speed corner being behind that front seven, because I think they'll be able to scheme up pressure, keep him from getting toasted on the back end. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong on this. I also like inside out flexibility. So depending on where you're lining up Kyle Hamilton, you could also sneak Ennis Rakestraw Jr. close to the line of scrimmage, play him in the slot. I like that flexibility he brings. San Francisco's next up at 63. I'm going to go Dominic Pooney here. Solid combine in my estimation. And I just think this is an upgrade at left guard. He's definitely going to be an interior offensive lineman, but I think this is just a clear, absolute upgrade over Aaron Banks. If you've been around the channel for a long time, you know how I feel about Aaron Banks. I think he's a good player. I think he'll be a good player if he gets to a gap scheme. Like, honestly, the Giants should give him a call and see if they can get him to play left guard next year. He's just not a fit in that Shanahan offense. Dominic Pooney, much more so in my estimation. And then we get to the Kansas City Chiefs here. We had them trade up, give up L'Jarius Sneed. Now we're going to actually have them move back. And luckily enough, the Los Angeles Rams pop up. How great is that? And I am going to throw in pick, wasn't it 210 that I had? Weird that the Chiefs don't have that. We'll just make it pick 172. The Rams, even if it's like, pick 172 or even further than that, they'll take those 5th, 6th round, picks. This is back-to-back years where the Rams have drafted Puka Nacua and then Kyron Williams in the 5th round the year before that. So, like, giving the Rams a 5th rounder is, like, kind of a scary weapon. So I think they'll want that extra pick back. But really, 83 and 100 for 64 is about the trade chart value. I just think the Rams would be sticklers. And I originally had it written down at 210, so I don't know where that pick's gone. But pick 172. I think that also works, and you'll see trade likely to be accepted. I'm going to force it through. And this is where I have my boy Michael Penix come off the board. I think he'd be awesome in a McVay offense. Like him a little bit in those Shanahan offenses, but McVay with an offense that has weapons. You set Penix behind Stafford for a year, maybe 2. Whenever Stafford hangs it up, I think Penix would be an awesome guy to be that predecessor to Matthew Stafford. All right, 3rd round time. Let's get on to the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to go Marshawn Kneeland here. I think he's that big-bodied edge rusher. If they keep Brian Burns around, Marshawn Kneeland, great replacement on the other side. Not just big and long, but also a little bit more bend and burst than I think people are giving him credit for. Pick 66, I'm going to go Kieran Amagaji, offensive tackle from Yale. Also has experience playing guard, so this could be twofold. You can keep DJ Humphries around, play him at left tackle. Paris Johnson Jr. stays at right tackle. Amagaji upgrade there at left guard. Or Paris Johnson Jr. plays right tackle. Amagaji plays left tackle. I'm still hearing people saying it in different ways. I'm going off the athletic pronunciation from Dane Brugler, Karan Amagaji. So let me know how you're saying it down below in the comment section. But I love the position flex there for the Cardinals. He'll be a starter whether it's at left tackle or at left guard. Washington Commanders then at 67. Let's go Jonah Ellis, just a hashtag good football player. NFL ready, needs to add weight, so I think he'll fall a little bit in this process, but Washington needs some immediate production from the edge group, so even if it means Ellis is kind of a DPR type, they'll take what they can get. Chicago here at pick 68. This is the Justin Fields trade. I'm going to have to go Mason McCormick. Feel like he's a guy that's getting a little slept on in this process. Listed as a guard at South Dakota State, I think he can play center. I think he'd be more than fine playing center. And actually, just jog my memory, did he ever play center? No, only left guard at South Dakota State. I think he'd be more than fine at center. I had to double check the arm length, but 6'5", 315, I think that'd be just fine. Great movement skills and also a mean streak, like kind of that shades of Christian Haynes. I just think Hayes is a little bit better. Mason McCormick, coming from a small school for sure, but plugging him at center in this blocking scheme, I would love that a ton for Chicago. And I feel like he's starting to get some love now, but a little under the radar for the larger draft community in my estimation. Pick 69, I'm actually have a trade here. This is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers moving back, and it's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals who decide to move up. So let's grab Cincy. It's going to be pick 80, 469, and thrown in there is pick 116. Trade likely to be accepted. It is. And look, the Chargers, they got to accumulate any picks they can. Next mock, I'll probably have them trade out of the number 5 spot because I do think they're going to do that on draft day. Also, my guy JT Sanders has been here for way too long. At this point, we've gotten through the receivers deep enough to where I think this is where JT Sanders is going to go. And ultimately, as much as I love JT Sanders, he's my tight end too. The receivers in this class are just better than tight end 2 in this class. So I think you're going to have to get to like receiver 10, 11 before it's like, okay, now JT Sanders might be a better pick than receiver 12, receiver 13 off the board, something like that. And plus, tight end for Cincinnati, this would be a great addition. So you get an offensive tackle. You're not getting Brock Bowers, but you're getting JT Sanders. I think Bengals fans would be pretty stoked about it. All right, then we get to the Giants here at 70. I'm going to have Spencer Rattler be the pick here. Let me know if you're a Giants fan. I know you're probably already teed about the Sua Mata'ia. You might not even be here at this pick, but I hope you are. Let me know what you think about Spencer Rattler and that Brian Dable. Can he develop him in shades of the Josh Allen progression? Don't think Rattler's going to be Josh Allen. Don't think he's going to be a top 3 quarterback in the league, but there's upside. There's a lot of talent. There's a ton of arm talent specific with Spencer Rattler. I think he's done some maturing as a person. Now it's going to take the right coach to see what he can be at the NFL level. I think Dable, he's got that background. He's done it in the past. Can he do it again with Rattler? All right, pick 71. I'm going to give Arizona Gabriel Murphy, 6'3", 260. It's just a great combination of size, length, power, enough athleticism, enough bend, just tons of college production. I think here at 71, kind of jack of all trades with that production. I feel really good about that value. Then we get to the New York Jets. This is a little diabolical. I won't lie to you. You could go into your offensive line, but ultimately, Christian Mahogany, maybe thought about that. Could go Zach Zinter. Don't hate that either. But I'm going to be diabolical. Michael Hall Jr. next to Quinnen Williams. Like, Michael Hall Jr. is a one-on-one winner. He may not be great against the run, but in a pass rush situation, that guy is going to beat up on whoever he's got across from him. You already got Quinnen Williams emerging as one of the best young interior defensive linemen in football. You have a great edge rotation, even if you do lose Bryce Huff. This is just another ass kicker in the middle of that defensive line for Robert Saleh. I don't know. Maybe it's a little too rich. Maybe 72. Maybe there's other needs that the Jets have, but this would be a really fun addition to that D line. All right, Detroit Lions in at 73. I'm going to go Ruka Rororo for a team that needs edge, but also use one more guy on the inside. I like the idea of Rororo. I guess, do they have him listed as an interior defensive lineman here on PFF? They do, huh? I see him more as an edge who can fold inside, just like Darius Robinson. So they have Robinson at edge, but Ruka Rororo at defensive interior. Interesting. But I think Rororo, early downs, plays outside, passing situations, you line him up inside alongside Lee McNeil, get James Houston on the field as a DPR. Love that a ton for Detroit. Pick 74. I'm going to go Max Melton here for the Atlanta Falcons. I did not mean to hit your offensive line. But great combine. The arm length checked out north of 30 inches. So I think this guy, plus, sub 4.4 speed, I think this guy could be an outside corner. And basically, I'm sending him to Atlanta because they have flexibility. They could use an outside guy. They could also use an upgraded slot. Either way you spin it, I think you could just bring Max Melton into camp, see where he plays better. And if he's a better outside corner, pair him up with AJ Terrell. If he's better in the slot, cool. That's an upgrade there where you could definitely use one. Chicago Bears then at 75. I'm going to go Johnny Wilson. I think a decent combine showing and just a rare body type, right? And he's slimmed down. Looks like he wants to play receiver. And, looking at the other receivers here, could go Tez Walker. Don't hate that. Jamari Thrash is interesting. Jermaine Burton is probably just talent-wise the best receiver available here, but I've heard some off-the-field stuff. We'll talk about him later on. Decided to go Johnny Wilson, just a very different body type than DJ Moore. Is he a fit for Shane Waldron's offense? That remains to be seen. That's kind of the iffy part here. Maybe they'd be the team that give Brendan Rice the second round or third round evaluation. I'm more a fourth round guy right now on Brendan Rice, but maybe they'd be the team to do that. But, especially, considering the draft Caleb Williams, I could see that. But I think Johnny Wilson, I just like a little bit more as a prospect. And again, very different body type than DJ Moore. So I dig that pairing. If you're a Bears fan, let me know what you think down below. All right, Denver Broncos then at pick number 76. High likelihood they lose Lloyd Cushenberry, especially after they spent so much money on offensive line last free agency. And if they do that, I think Cedric Van Pran's a pretty decent replacement for that. He may not be as good on the move as Cushenberry, but I think he'll be serviceable there. I think he's a better mover than some are giving him credit for. I'm not saying he's Jack Powers Johnson or Tyler Linderbaum, not by any stretch, but He's also not stuck in cement. Not totally, at least. Let's get to the Raiders here at 77. And I'm going to give them another interior offensive lineman that I think was a big winner out of the NFL Combine, Tanner Bortolini. He's got experience playing all over the place, which you can see here. He's played center. He's played both guard spots, even some snaps at right tackle a few years ago. So I would just draft him, play him at center. I think he's a fantastic fit for that wide zone, Luke Getsy blocking scheme, inside zone, wide zone. I think he runs a decent bit of wide, but zone blocking scheme, either way you spin it, he's a great upgrade there at center, and then you just move Dylan Parham over to left guard, or right guard for that matter. Parham plays guard, Bortolini at center, upgrading that interior offensive line for the Las Vegas Raiders. Seattle then at 78. This is where I'm going to go Cam Kinchins. They cut both their safeties, and I think 4-6 time, maybe Kinchins plays box only. I don't know. He shows so much instincts at Miami, and like he had this, I can't remember who it was against now. That sucks. This ridiculous field, basically covered the entire half the field, pick on the sideline, and I remember like Dane Brugler, Jordan Reed, there was a bunch of draft analysts being like, you just don't see this type of range in the safety. This is freaky. And then he goes out there and runs 4.6. I'll try to find that clip. Maybe I'll be able to post it somewhere as like the pinned comment down below. I'll try to do that if I remember. But like that type of range plus his 40 time, it just doesn't match up. It's weird. But that being said, Julian Love, majority of his snaps actually last year were played at free safety. So you could play Love over the top, Kinchins in the box. You could rotate it. You can run some split safety with those two guys. I don't know. I think Kinchins is a good football player. I think he should go before 78, but the Combine's definitely going to hold back his value a little bit. All right, then we get to the Atlanta Falcons. I don't really know what to do with Austin Booker. He's this interesting blend of like length plus, bend, but like kind of light too. I don't know. And then the Combine was super disappointing too. So like, where's this athlete that I thought I saw on tape? So I don't know. Atlanta they could use one more edge. I know we took one at the top of the board too. So I'm double dipping here, but I think Booker's still worth a shot in the dark somewhere here in the middle of the third round. And at 6'6" in his arm, like he's different than Dallas Turner. He's different than Arnold Ebiketie. So I'm just trying to throw a different body type in the room. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, you still have other guys ahead of them. It's your third round. It's your second third round pick for that matter. I don't think it's the end of the world, but I don't hate the idea of double dipping an edge for this Atlanta team, and at least just rotating him in as like maybe an early downs guy to play the run. I don't know, but 245, do you really want that guy against the run? I don't know. I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place here with Austin Booker. Anyways, let's get on to the Los Angeles Chargers here at pick number 80. I'm going to have him draft Theo Johnson. I know a lot of people are like, oh man, Brock Bowers, that's going to be the Jim Harbaugh type. I think there's too many holes in that roster to prioritize tight end at pick 5. Brock Bowers is a special guy, and he'd be a great addition. But yeah, I just think you got to go elsewhere at that selection, or at least move back, and then maybe you can think about it depending on where you are. But Theo Johnson kind of fits in with that inline tight end size, 6'6", 250-ish. You're 6'6", 264. Great combine, awesome athlete. I don't think the world's best blocker, but I think that can be developed with some time. Kind of your prototypical inline tight end. Another receiving threat though for Justin Herbert. I think Theo Johnson's more, akin to what Jim Harbaugh has previously had at the NFL level. And also, don't rule out A.J. Barner. Like, what's holding him back from just drafting his old Michigan tight end in like the 4th or 5th round? Like, I think Barner, in a lot of ways, is more in play for this Los Angeles Chargers team than Brock Bowers is, at least at 5. If they move back to 9 or whatever, sure, maybe they'll do that. But in a lot of ways, I think Theo Johnson or A.J. Barner is more likely to be a Charger than Brock Bowers is. Anyways, back to the Seattle Seahawks. This round, Christian Mahogany come off the board. They might have something with Bradford at one of the guard spots, and I could see Mahogany just being the other one. I think a better mover, again, than people are giving him credit for. I think he'd be able to fit just fine in the Kalen DeBoer blocking scheme. Kalen DeBoer, I did that last video too. Ryan Grubb blocking scheme. So him plus Bradford, maybe there's those two guards. Just a different route to add one more guy in the mix. I've done Jax Powers Johnson. I've done Troy Fautano. I've done Graham Barton with the Seattle team. Just trying to find different ways where they can get at least one more interior offensive lineman in that room. And I wouldn't hate Mahogany, Oluwatimi, and Bradford. I think that could be a good enough trio through that interior offensive line group. Anyways, moving on to the Indianapolis Colts here at 82. I'm going to go Kyrie Jackson. I mean, they already have Juju Brents. Let's just add another 6'3" freak. I think Kyrie Jackson's like a much better man press fit, but at the same time, like his athletic skills and his frame and his long arms at a cover 3 heavy defense where you sprinkle in man occasionally off of it, might be a good place for him to go. I actually think that could be a really solid fit. Plus, it's 6'4" Juju Brents on one side with insane change of direction skills, and it's very straight line speed. Kyrie Jackson at 6'3", like that's a tough task to throw against that secondary. Let's get to the Chargers here at 83. And hey, if you lose L'Jarius Sneed, someone with a lot of size, this could be a good Kyrie Jackson place too. I decided that Kyrie Jackson would let's just have him be the pick before. I'm not drafting for the team after. I'm worried about the team on the clock. But Cam Hart can kind of give you a lot of that same stuff. good combine, showcase a lot of movement, good fluidity on the on-field drills, plus good testing in general. 6'3". Yeah, I think this could be a really solid L'Jarius Sneed replacement, another big body corner that can kind of do a lot of what Spagnuolo wanted out of guys like L'Jarius Sneed and some of the other guys they've had on the outside. All right, next up for the Pittsburgh Steelers, we got L'Jarius Sneed actually in that trade. Speaking of the that move we made with Kansas City, let's go Jarrian Jones. I think Jarrian Jones then to play the slot. Awesome final year at Florida State. Love the movement skills. One of the top RES performers. And I think that change of direction skill set. You play him on the inside, JPJ on the outside, Sneed on the outside. All of a sudden, that receiver or that cornerback trio in Pittsburgh is looking mighty fine. Let's get to the Houston Texans. A little bit of a projection pick here for sure. But, man, I just love the upside that Leonard Taylor comes with. Yeah, the floor could be potentially really low because right now he's kind of the Chop Robinson of the interior defensive line group, but, not as much love. Not going to go in the first round, right? But, man, you give him DeMeco Ryans as a head coach, all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, okay. I feel decent about him hitting his upside, or at least hitting some of his upside. So, playing him in the middle of that defensive line. And like I said earlier, I think this team should go out and sign Christian Wilkins. I think it's a great landing spot for Wilkins, and I think it'd be a great addition for Houston. So in this case, you sign the former Miami Dolphin, you have the former Miami Hurricane, just kind of playing alongside Wilkins. Next thing you know, by year 3, hopefully Wilkins is rubbed off enough to where Taylor is a true breakout impact player, and it makes if you do decide to move on from Wilkins at the end of that, contract, Leonard Taylor can step in and be an absolute freak. Or you have Wilkins plus Taylor plus, Will Anderson, that defensive line looks freaky. So it's an upside play with, a relatively low floor for sure, but I would love to see what DeMeco Ryans could do with Leonard Taylor at the third. All right, to the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to go to the linebacker well here and draft just a good football player in Junior Colson. Not the world's greatest athlete, but a guy who's relatively new to the sport and has picked it up very, very quick and has been trusted as a 3-year starter in that Jim Harbaugh defense and eventual, national championship defense in Michigan. So I think he's got all the instincts in the world, and that Mike linebacker spot is where Cleveland can get better. So could they find it here with Colson at 86? Dallas Cowboys then at 87. Hey, Stephon Gilmore hitting the block. I think Bland plus Diggs could be your outside corners. Let's give him an upgrade in the slot. I think Javon Bullard's one of the best slot players in this year's class. I prioritize the slot a ton. I think way more than most. So I think this would be an awesome addition to that secondary. Makes that run defense that much better. He'll light up offensive tackles. He's not as big as those guys, so he's not always winning, but he's not going in scared either, and occasionally he'll catch that offensive tackle off guard and he'll light him up. So love what it means for the run game reinforcement. Just love having that type of presence and playmaker close to the line of scrimmage. This is already a Cowboys defense that's been able to generate a lot of turnovers. Granted, Dan Quinn's gone now, but could Javon Bullard almost be that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson type for this Cowboys defense and continue to be that playmaker that I think he was 2 years ago, specifically at Georgia? I think he can. And, with Dan Quinn gone, but maybe inserting Bullard, you could still have this high turnover margin team, the Dallas Cowboys, assuming Dak doesn't, have a ton of interceptions that aren't really his fault like 2 years ago, and assuming Javon Bullard is, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson type of impact player, which there's a lot of different variables in there. Anyways, let's move on to the Green Bay Packers here at 88. I'm going to go Jaden Hicks. We drafted a corner. I think DeJean to play the slot. Let's say they keep Stokes and Jair Alexander as the outside corner tandem. Jaden Hicks then as a box safety. Love that. And also could place him over the top. Majority of his snaps at Washington State were at free safety. So it's just going to come down to how they feel about his athleticism playing over the top or in the box or a little bit of both. But Jaden Hicks, big time upgrade at safety where the Packers really need it. Tampa Bay then at pick number 89. Could have gone running back here. Don't hate that. I'm going to go Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I would imagine they bring back Levante David on another 1-year deal. He'll probably just retire at Tampa Bay Buccaneer. But Devin White's going to get a bag. So I'd replace White here with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. A little small. The arm length is a little concerning, but, NFL pedigree with his dad. Really solid tape, especially in coverage at Clemson. So could be a long-term piece to replace Levante David, but at least for a year, I think they're going to be the running mates there in the middle of that Tampa defense. Back to the Arizona Cardinals once again, and I love the idea of Jalen Wright. Yes, they have James Conner still there. I think that could be a great 1-2 punch. Conner next to Kyler Murray, but also Jalen Wright as RB2. That's an explosive backfield. Jalen Wright crushed the combine. You see the big playability all over his tape. And you're talking about a read option between him and Kyler Murray. There's no right answer there as a defensive end having to make a decision. So I love that addition. I think he'd be a great pairing with James Conner, who's not the most explosive, big play guy. And then you're talking about plays where it's Wright plus Kyler Murray. I don't want to even have to think about that as a defense. Like that sounds frightening. Let's get to the Green Bay Packers then at 91. I'm going to go Mekhi Wingo. I've had some people say, this new Jeff Hafley defense going to be a lot more press man. It's also going to be a lot more. We want upfield rush from the defensive line, a lot more four-man fronts there. So let's go Mekhi Wingo. Don't know if you have to force him on the field right away because you got Devontae Wyatt and Kenny Clark still playing some good ball. But Kenny Clark's not going to be able to play forever. So I wonder if they could bring in Mekhi Wingo, who crushed the combine. You see the straight line speed and athleticism and that great, at the line of scrimmage burst. But right now he's more athlete than he is, a polished product. So could you kind of sit him behind Kenny Clark and, Devontae Wyatt, and in a year or two he becomes the Kenny Walker replacement? I think it's a live possibility, and the Packers are always pretty good about drafting a year or two ahead, and I think Wingo could be that for Kenny Clark. And plus, I don't know, if I'm understanding what this Jeff Hafley defense is going to be, even Wingo is just like a third down specialist, could be really, really scary. And then we get to the Lions again at 92. I'm going to go Zach Zinter, so we're doubling up at guard, but man, I think Zach Zinter's got some great tape there at Michigan. Yeah, he got hurt the last game of the year, and yeah, he may not be like the most off-the-charts athlete, but man, he's just a good football player, and again, kind of like what we did earlier with Cooper Beebe, just tons of starting experience. I think he fits well enough into that blocking scheme. And they're also just two mean SOBs that really fit in with, hey, if we're going to run it up the middle, I'm going to demolish the dude that's across from me. So I think that kind of fits in with that Detroit Lions philosophy and mindset and, kind of team building process. So I like Zinter and I like Beebe. And I think doing it in the second plus another guy in the third, you're just getting solid plug and play options, staying cheap there as opposed to paying $16 million a year potentially for Jonah Jackson when you can use that money elsewhere on this roster, like corner. Let's get to the Ravens then at 93. This one I'm going to have Jonathan Brooks come off the board. This team maybe gets Derrick Henry, and if they don't, I think Jonathan Brooks next to Lamar Jackson could be super, super scary. Very different than what we were talking about with Jalen Wright, Kyler Murray, two super explosive athletes. Brooks, not necessarily as explosive as Jalen Wright, but man, just between the tackles, great vision, great contact balance. I think he'll be fine after the ACL tear. Like we're seeing running backs kind of handle that in stride more often than not nowadays. So, J.K. Dobbins hasn't worked out, but I think if they got a legit plus level running back in that offense, it becomes that much harder to handle. Lad McConkey, Jonathan Brooks in that offense. Ravens offense was hard enough to handle last year. Man, I'm kind of loving this draft for the Ravens, which kills me as a Pittsburgh fan. Anyways, we got, 7 picks to go. San Francisco at 94. I'm going to go Blake Fisher, a guy that for whatever reason Notre Dame just hasn't been able to fully get the max potential out of. I think at worst he's Colt McKivitt's level player just because Shanahan, that blocking scheme, they keep guys clean. Even guys that don't fit in that scheme, like Aaron Banks, right? Like, he hasn't been a total liability. He's just not been good. And I think this offensive line should be great rather than like one guy who's great. So Blake Fisher at the worst is Colt McKivitt's level of play. At the best, Shanahan gets what Notre Dame couldn't out of Blake Fisher. And I'm seeing a lot of guys talk about like Blake Fisher as one of their like under the radar, my guy type of tackles. Like really like him at late third, early fourth range. And I'm right there with him. I think there's a ton of talent. And I think Kyle Shanahan and that offensive line coach there in San Francisco could be the group to get it out of Blake Fisher. And if they do, that's a huge upgrade there at one of their weaker spots. We already gave him Dominic Pooney at left guard, which I do think is their weakest spot. Like, these picks hit. San Francisco's O-line is really, really scary. Chiefs back on the clock here at 95. And you know what? They already extended one Christian Jones. Let's just go give them another one. Let's give them an offensive Christian Jones. Donovan Smith wasn't very good this year, also on a one-year deal. So Christian Jones, strong Senior Bowl. Fake he could be a starting option for them at left tackle. Basically, you make it a camp battle. Jones versus Wanya Morris. Iron sharpens iron. Whoever the best is becomes your left tackle next year for KC. Then we get to the Miami Dolphins, and I apologize, Dolphins. If you're watching this deep in the video, I appreciate your patience, one. And two, I apologize. I wish we could have gone into your offensive line. I just don't love... Bo Lemire, maybe if you lose out on Connor Williams at center, you could do that. But after that, Javion Cohen, maybe. Don't love the options. Would have loved to get you another interior offensive lineman. But instead, I'm going to go defensive line, a flexible guy, and Brandon Dorless. They obviously move on from Christian Wilkins. I don't think Dorless is anywhere near the type of player that Wilkins is, but also they move on from Emmanuel Ogbah. So could Brandon Dorless kind of patchwork, be a little bit of an Ogbah replacement, a little bit of a guy who fills in the shoes for Christian Wilkins? Maybe, but I don't love it. I'm sorry, Miami fans. I wish there was a better pick here. This is just one of the better players available in my estimation and could be kind of a two birds and one stone type of addition. Then we get to the Philadelphia Eagles here at number 97. This run, I have Jermaine Burton come off the board. I've heard some off-field issues are a concern with Burton. I don't know. I've never talked to the guy, so I'm not saying that as fact. I'm just saying it's been speculated. But as a designated deep threat, this guy has got the athleticism to do that and the deep route running prowess to do just that. So he absolutely could be an upgrade over Quez Watkins. I do want to throw it out there. I wanted to get Burton somewhere here in the top 100 because I think his talent's too good to get out of that. I did consider a trade, and if you're a Seahawks fan listening, like, let me know what you think about this. I thought about having Philly trade out of this spot and then having Seattle draft Jordan Travis here. I think that could be a really interesting sit for a year proposition for the Seahawks. So I don't know, just something to keep your eye on. Actually, you know what? We might come back to that, actually. I might go ahead and pull the trigger on that because pick 101's whatever. We might just go ahead and do that anyways. I've already given away the last pick. San Francisco at pick number 98. This is going to be Tyke Smith. I think this team could absolutely use an upgrade in the slot. Tyke Smith, all of a sudden forgotten. I just think Georgia had two great slot players, and they could only play one guy there. Tyke Smith, Javon Bullard, I think we're both going to be really solid slots at the next level. Tyke Smith, I enjoyed his Senior Bowl. I think he showcased a lot of what I assume he will be at the next level. A lot of change of direction, great coverage skill sets for the middle of the field, also carried receivers deep down the field. I think he's a really good coverage player, but also fearless in the run game, kind of the same stuff I was talking about with Javon Bullard. Like, really underrated player in this class, in my opinion. Bills then at pick number 99. I'm going to have them take Kalen Bullock. I just think, they cut Jordan Poyer. Maybe they decide to bring him back later on in free agency, but they need to keep adding to safety. And yes, Christian Benford's there, but also they move on from Tre'Davious White. So it's one of those things where I hear Bills fans say, oh, Benford could do this. Oh, Benford would be that guy. And it's like, well, you can only be at one place at a time. So let's roll the dice here. Kalen Bullock's a pretty awful, at least in his college, time. He's a pretty awful tackler. So they're going to have to work on that. But there's a lot of upside for what he could be as a coverage player and as a turnover potential machine. So boom bust for sure. But the Bills are kind of in a spot where 99, might be worth a gamble. Then we get to the Chiefs again, pick number 100. You get the Chris Jones extension, but could they go with an upside play here? Former top interior defensive lineman recruit coming out of high school. You see flashes of it. Starts his career at edge at LSU, then moves to the inside. Like, having Mason Smith and his upside alongside Chris Jones might be the best thing possible. Kind of like what I talked about earlier, where like Leonard Taylor's a lot of upside there. And maybe if Houston does get Christian Wilkins, maybe that's like the mentor-mentee relationship he needs. Mason Smith, Chris Jones, a lot of the same could be true there in KC. And then I was going to go Malachi Corley here for the Commanders. Let's see if sometimes the trade simulators, specifically on mockdraft database.com, it gets a little finicky with these late second trades. Where are the Seattle Seahawks? Oh, there they are, pick 119. Oh God, what would the math be here? 119 for 101, and I don't know, 194 likely to be accepted. Let's just offer the trade. Cool. Seattle comes up, and everything I just talked about a minute ago about Jordan Travis. Seattle fans, let me know what you think about Jordan Travis being the last pick of this mock draft. A little bit of an audible there. I was going to go Malachi Corley as that Curtis Samuel replacement for Washington. If you're a Commanders fan, let me know what you would think about that. But if you're a Seattle fan, like, could Jordan Travis be your like sit for a year, maybe two behind Geno, an eventual guy as the quarterback option? I think it's worth taking a shot on. I think Travis has a lot going for him. The accuracy was a little bit spotty. I don't think the arm is like God tier for the NFL standards, but I think it's passable. I think the accuracy could be improved with some time. I think he's a good athlete. I think he's a great leader. I think there's enough there. He's at least a really solid backup option. I think there's something there that you can mine a potential starter out of Jordan Travis. So let me know what you think about that if you're a Seahawks fan. Pick 101. Are you okay with that? Would you mind the trade up to go get that guy? Or are you just out on Jordan Travis? Would rather that pick not be used on him? I'd love to know your thoughts. And of course, no matter who your favorite team is or how you feel about this mock draft, let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you fall somewhere there in between? Let me hear your case and how you feel basically coming out of this mock draft. Who's your favorite team? Did you like the picks? Did you like the trade maybe I made for your squad? Who went too high? Who went too low? What position groups also? I'd love to know from like who's your favorite team and what position groups do you think they're going to end up targeting in this year's NFL class? I'm always curious to see what fans think their team's going to end up targeting in the NFL draft. So leave me all those comments down below in the comments section. Feel free to leave multiple comments. That only does good things for this video, for the algorithm. So leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. This should be the video that gets us to 3,500 subs. I think we're right on knocking on the door of that. So if that's the case, thank you everyone in advance. We've been growing pretty fast here through draft season, and it's one of the small reasons why I do it. I really just want to hear from y'all, so leave those comments down below in the comment section. I just love talking NFL draft, and there's so many different possibilities here. So I'm getting long-winded. I'm going on a last-second tangent here, but again, leave me your thoughts down below in the comments section. That's gonna do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.